right, and welcome to Baarns Heller. See, I already started it wrong. We're the Heller Baarns Ask Us Anything session, and today we have an amazing gentleman, Simon Vance. And so, rather than me introducing him, Johnny's known him for years. So, Johnny, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Mr. Vance here.
I'll tell you nothing about myself, but I will tell you that Simon Vance is a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for, oh my God, many, many years. I really don't know how long. I don't know not knowing him. Someone wrote in on one of our Facebook things that they're happy just to listen to Simon read the phone book. And I'll tell you from the bottom of my heart, that would be the best phone book reading anyone had ever attended. However, we're not going to have him do that. Welcome, Simon Vance, my friend and actor extraordinaire. How are you?
Johnny, Don, good to see you. I'm good. I'm good. It's a lovely sunny morning out here in Los Angeles. I know it's lunchtime where you are,
We have
Johnny,
snow.
but you have.
Yeah,
Oh, I
first
did
time
see
like
that. First time
700
for
days. We had like an
700
inch.
days.
Well, I took the dogs out.
We read the same
Took
newspaper.
the dogs out at
Yeah.
3 a.m. so they could get in the fresh snow and run around in it.
I'm sorry, 3 in the
Yeah, well,
morning?
that's when
There's a story behind that. What? Do you get up at 3 in the morning?
I was awake, so I took them out.
Wow, you're a good
Yeah.
doggo now. Good for
I
you.
don't sleep as well as once I did.
He's
Yeah,
a good
it's-
dog owner. Well, so
yeah.
I read your bio, and one of the things that I noticed that I thought was kind of an interesting starting point. So when you were in high school, you would fall asleep with your smartphone and your earpods listening to audiobooks, and that inspired you to become a narrator all the way back when you were young in high school. Is that even close?
No. Where do I begin? First, earpods, and what? How old do you think I am? we had valves and things. The underground generator in the corner of the bedroom to keep us warm. Yeah, no. I mean,
You didn't inspire to be an audiobook narrator. How in the world did you start, and what was your first interest in this whole acting and performing point of view? You have guitars behind you, but I assume that, how did this whole thing get started?
It wasn't the guitars that did it. How much time we got? Because I'll try and do the, what is it? TLDR. Anyway, I was a good reader when I was a kid. In class, called on, I could sight read, and I could sight read ahead of what most people could read when they were kids. There's a recording in the family somewhere of me reading a Winnie the Pooh story when I was 6, and it's obnoxiously cute. Unfortunately, I've lost it, but maybe it'll turn up when I get the Vance family library running. How did it happen? I knew a guy whose dad worked in the BBC in the mid-60s, and he was a very good friend, and his dad was a musician, was a great jazz clarinet player, but he became an arts producer at Radio Brighton, which opened in 1968. I'll try and go fast. In 1968, so I knew him. He went on to join the BBC. He skipped his final year, as a didn't go to university, went to Radio Brighton. And we stayed friends. And at one point, I was doing a summer job. I went off to do civil engineering, which I completely screwed up. Took a year off. In that year off, I go visit my friend, and I got a job there. Ultimately, I'm jumping a whole lot of stuff. After graduating from university, I got a job at Radio Brighton because I thought, if Chris can do this was my friend, then I can do it. And I'd worked part-time in the summer because visiting my friend, his dad employed me, and I stood in for the arts production when he was off on holiday. And so this friend Chris went up to London, joined Radio 4, which I did later too. I tend to follow what other people do. And I visited him one time, and he had a book on his, I was going to say bedside table, but I wouldn't have seen it on his bedside table. Seriously, I wouldn't. It was in his hall table, that's right. And it had a lot of markers in it. I picked it up and I said, what's this? He said, oh, I do books for the blind. I said, oh, that's interesting. Mental note. A couple of years later, when I went up to London and joined Radio 4, and this would have been 1982, 83, 83, I think, I found odd shifts, overnight, weekends, and I'd have days free, and I didn't know anybody, and I thought, I want to do something useful, books for the blind, charity, let me do that. So I applied to them, they took me on. I didn't realize because I got taken on immediately, and I know friends who'd applied a little later. It took years before they got on the roster, but I got on the roster immediately, which should have been a sign.
So
And
I
I
want to
recorded
clarify
all the
this.
time
So you were writing books for the blind.
reading.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Is he
Yeah,
always like
pretty
this,
much. Yeah,
Johnny?
he's kind of a
He
teacher.
mishears
Yeah.
things, you know.
I can't
Okay,
hear
very
very well.
conveniently. Yeah. Do we shout? I'll shout. So I worked at Radio
Early
4
days of
through till
audiobooks.
1990. Is this one for Don? Let me just make it a little clearer. So I was working there, and I did that, and I called that my apprenticeship. And I came to the US, a whole other story as well, in 1990, landed in March of 1992. And I was here to, be a superstar on the stage or in movies. So I immediately went to the place one should go for that. I went to San Francisco. So there wasn't a lot going on. And while I was doing some theatre work, a friend of a friend, a friend of my then brother-in-law, David Case, was working at Blackstone Audio. It's one of the founders, or with Craig Black. He, Wanda McCadden, who recently died, sadly, and David Case were sort of worked together a lot. And he introduced me, told me how to do a demo. I did that, and I started working for Blackstone on the side. And the little side story here, I went under a different name because apparently everybody did back in those days. And one of the reasons I did is because I knew I was going to be a major movie star, and I didn't want to sabotage my successful movie career by being a really bad narrator in audiobooks. So I had a different name just to disguise myself. But then I, from Blackstone, several years later, nothing happened fast in those days. People get impatient. They need success instantly here. But it took years, and it was 10 years before I realized, almost 10 years, that there was an industry out there of other people recording at home. Seriously, I didn't. So 1992, late in 1992, I started recording. 2002, because it was cheap to rent a hotel room in New York at that point. For some reason, something happened in 01, I can't remember what it was. But the Times Square hotels were cheap, and I came to an APAC thing. And it wasn't the conference, it was APA. It was one of those audition things where you stand up in front of 30 publishers. And even after that, it was 2 years after that before Tantor came calling. So we're talking about 2004, and then suddenly things started happening. And I got my first Audi nomination quite early on, 2001 or 2, but I was told it's a publisher's award. You shouldn't bother to turn up because it's all for the publishers. And so I didn't go for several years. And I got my first earphone award for excellence from Audiophile magazine in, I think, 2000 for Dracula. Some things long missing now off the shelves. They've sort of.
So I'm trying to recall some of those early days, because I remember I had the same thing. I did. Your home was Blackstone, mine was Recorded Books, and I didn't know about everybody else. And do you remember? Did you go to the Audis that they had at a tavern on the green in the park? Oh, that was a bacchanal. So. That was when I met. It was crazy, but I do.
Do you remember what year that was?
I don't remember anything. No, some year or another. 2000 and something. Was early though, because I also remember when early in our audiobook careers, when I was involved a little heavier with the APA, and I was involved in helping set up the APAC or sponsoring things, and I put you on all my panels. And you remember we started the listeners' lounge. That was when we had the Simon Vances and Katie Kellgrens and Barbara Rosenblatt, Scott Brick, Simon Preble, just some, and all it was at the end of the day, here was the idea. At the end of the day, you'd get some of the top narrators. Simon Vance, always a top narrator. Just to give a reading, 3 to 5 minute read, just for the pure enjoyment of listening to brilliant people do brilliant things brilliantly. And it was charming. We did that for a number of years. And it's one of my favorite memories of my earlier days in the audiobook world. My other one, it's you, John Lee, Gerard Doyle, Simon, every Brit and me was in this. It was after a SAG-AFTRA meeting at some place. It was a very wooden, it looked like a British bar. and almost all of us, I think almost all of us had Guinness. And I looked around and said, yeah, this is out of a movie. This is great. It was one of my favorite. It was early. It was early in the before when I started. I don't know if you're like this because your dream was stage and film and stuff, as was mine. I never realized that audiobooks would be the thing, and I know you did. And
No.
now it's been our thing for quite some time.
Yeah.
But
And
so
and
I want to summarize that though. Here's something that most people don't get if they're just starting in this industry. You were an overnight success from that timeline in about 15 years, roughly. I mean, from plus or
Yeah.
minus a couple years. But let's just say, let's cut it down. You took a decade from the time you kind of did your first one to the time you started winning awards or being part of the industry and knowing who Johnny was, and you guys knew each other and had a small club. And at that time, you were going into studios 100% of the time. I don't think there was any home recording at that point. Close?
No, I'm one of the early home narrators. I never went into a studio till probably 2003 or
really,
4.
Oh, so you did it backwards.
I was at home throughout.
Okay.
And in 1996, I don't know, I don't know that I can officially lay claim to this, but I'm a techie kind of a guy. And I was at home, and I think it was 96, something like that. I was going through divorce and bankruptcy and depression, all kinds of crap fell on my head at the time, which I may have put there, but anyway, that's by the by. I knew that you could record digitally. It was possible to record digitally, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool? And so I got a computer. It had 4 megabytes of RAM. It was compact with a Q.
Oh, yeah.
If you remember those.
I do.
And you record for, I think you record for half an hour. It took an hour to save the file. But Blackstone were willing to take it. And I recorded digitally, and I edited my own stuff. Because I've always done straight record. That's a whole other discussion. Maybe somebody will ask a question about that. I don't like punch and roll to do myself. I don't mind somebody else does it for me. I've tried it. I just don't like it. I don't have as much control over it as I do with my straight record. And if I do the cleanup edit afterwards myself, before I send it to the publisher, who then does the proofing and the QCing and all the rest of it. But it was, that's what I did. I much preferred that because originally, I started off with a double cassette machine, and you could stop, start, and it was punch and roll, but with, the stop button.
Yeah.
Really accurate stuff. And I hated that. And I did
were you
that,
on Pro Tools
which was
at that
similar.
time?
No, I never did. I couldn't get that. I just don't like Pro Tools. No, I went back in when I was doing this, 96 or whatever, I went to a music store and I said, I want some, audio editing stuff. And he sold me Cubase, which is the massive everything music you need. And in one little corner of it was this thing called Wavelab 1.0.
Yeah.
Steinberg's Wavelab
Oh.
1.0. And I thought, that's what I want. And I have stayed with Steinberg's Wavelab throughout. We're on the 11.2 or 12 point something, could look it up. But it's been Pro 11 I've got here. That's what I did. And I think I must have been, if not the first, one of the very earliest home adopters of digital recording.
Yeah.
Which had its pros and cons, especially using Windows computers. I moved over to Mac about a decade or more ago. But with Windows, at certain times, you'd spend your hour recording and then it would all disappear into some sort of blue thing. And it was horrifying. There were days that were just horrifying.
Oh, yeah, especially back in the day. Today, it's different today. But so someone's asked a question in the group here.
Much.
And in terms of when you're recording, are you wearing headphones 100% of the time? Are you doing monitors? How do you, people are talking about that and trying to figure out what they should do. Now, the one thing I will say to the audience here, these two gentlemen have recorded more books and forgotten more than most of us have ever known about this stuff. They also come at it from a different point of view in that sometimes if I learned to drive I learned to drive on a stick shift. So my favorite thing, my son still has one. I love getting in his car and driving a stick shift because it's not my car. I can go do it, have a great time. But
Wheelies.
it's not something I would really recommend as far as my mom or 98% of the population. Driving a stick shift is fun. It's the way I learned. I'll still have a good time doing it. I still recommend everybody do it because it's interesting. But now with paddle shifter, anyway, there's better things today or different things. And so the way I succeeded as a driver as a young guy may not apply to 95% of the people. These two have a tremendous amount of experience, and they may do a certain method and totally nail it. And I do know Simon today could record still on a cassette. Heller could do the same thing, and they would take it and they would make the most of it, and they still would be award-winning narrators. But tell us about your headphone experience. Tell us about your monitor experience. How do you record today when you do it at home?
Oh, you want to know about my headphone experience?
Yes, I do.
I thought nobody knew
like
about
fuzzy
that.
ones? Do
I
you like
was,
pretty ones?
I'm going to say I just want to keep that story private because the headphone experience, it's notorious amongst those who know. Johnny knows, but I'm not going to go there.
No.
So yeah, no, when I come from radio initially on BBC, and in the studio you wore your cans, that's what I used to call them, one ear on, one ear off, so that you can hear somebody's giving you feedback, you can hear your own voice, and you can talk to people in the studio. And if anybody, you also hear the atmosphere. So it's a habit I got into. I use headphones. I've got them, I don't know how long the cable is, but here we go. Oh, look, it's a long, I got a long cable. But these are ones I use, and I wear them one ear on, one ear off. That's how I use them. I don't normally have this in as well. That's for this, but this is how I do it. And although I don't need to, but that's too impersonal for me. I don't like that. I'm cut off from reality. That gives me the acoustics of the room generally. I can hear my voice through that. And the one that's on allows me to hear if there's digital, shenanigans going on, if something's not recording, if there's a blip. I mean, occasionally I'll get interference, right? There's something weird here. And I notice it very, very rarely, but it's like a radar signal that goes around and it comes and goes.
Yeah, it's called a cell phone.
Yeah, that's right.
Or Wi-Fi.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there was at the time, you remember when you couldn't take your iPhone into a studio or near a microphone ever. That's changed somewhat. But I'm very aware of that one.
We have in our studio, we have actually 3 sets of really excellent headphones, none of which do I use. The other 2 are still packed up. I don't like stuff on my head. I use these guys, and even this I only do. Joanna likes. I only do one ear, like Simon. I just don't like stuff. And when I go to a studio, if they have it set up so that the sound, they can hit a button and I can hear them without wearing the earphones, then I don't wear them at all. But a lot of studios want you to wear the headphones. So if they do, I do exactly as Simon does. I just don't like. It feels, I grew up in Chicago, and that it feels like earmuffs to me. It feels like I'm going out, and it always, when you put earmuffs on, it changes your perception of the entire world because you're not hearing things the same.
Yeah.
And I feel, you're not officially, but I just feel closed off.
Yeah.
And not as comfortable in my skin.
I agree.
Well, it's different, and even people that mix music for a living will tell you that headphones create a different feel. And performers, so just watching from the outside, because I've, been the tech guy for so many of these high-end people, you get them to take their headphones off, and they actually perform like an excellent, actor. When they have the headphones on, they start listening to themselves, and when you get in your head about anything, being a performer, that's a bad thing. Well, it's not a bad thing. People that come from radio, though, this is one of the things that I do see. If someone came from radio, they're almost always used to having headphone at least on one ear. And some of those people can totally nail a great performance with headphones on because they have so much experience with that. So in terms of if you're out there newer, you need to try it all 3 ways. With the headphones on.
When I'm editing,
one on. Go ahead.
When I'm doing clean edit, I've got monitors here. This is the computer I do my quick edit on. And I got things here, but in the studio, if I'm in a studio elsewhere, it depends how the what they've got set up. For the most part, I'm quite happy to record without headphones on because it's somebody else. I mean, that's why I don't mind doing punch and roll with somewhere else. Usually it's Penguin Random House and they like straight record anyway, so I'm fine with that. But sometimes, like Blackstone, I haven't been in a studio for ages, but Blackstone does punch and roll. Their engineers are so good, and I trust them, and they'll take responsibility for it. But I don't.
I want to
do that
ask
in
you
my
a
place.
question,
But,
if I may, and you don't have to answer if you don't want. I'm just curious because the way the business has changed when you and I, in our early days in it and where we are today, do you occasionally, I know that we used to be given books. Simon, here's a book for you. Johnny, here's a book for you. We want you to do this, whatever. We just didn't audition. Now there's a lot more calls to audition because the author has a lot more say in who gets the book. Is Simon Vance's voice the voice in their head? And who knows? So are you finding yourself auditioning more than you used to, as opposed to just being given things?
yeah, I've always auditioned. I mean, there's always been auditions, and they've always been frustrating because how you sound in 2 minutes is not how you're going to sound after 6 hours. And you may have a voice that sounds really good, for 30 seconds, and then people go, Jesus, this is too much. So it's okay. I don't mind auditioning. I'm happy to. I think, yeah, as you say about they have the rights now. They hold on to the audio rights, and they dictate more. I'm not sure they're always the best choices. I used to like it because what it was the audiobook publisher had the rights to, or they'll choose the voice, and they had their people, which was us.
The reason I
which
asked,
is very convenient.
You and I and others will be, favorites of certain people always, but the industry changes, new people come in, and casting business, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to make it clear to our listeners and viewers that Simon Vance auditions, Johnny Heller auditions. It's not part of being an actor, and you and I both regard this as acting. It is you have to audition. It's not everybody auditions, and I just think people have it in their mind. I think people have some mistakes in their understanding of what the top level audiobook narrators do and how they do it. Do you audition? Of course. It's part of the game, part of how it's played. And I was going to make it clear that even the great Simon Vance, who has papered his house in audiophile awards and things, auditions, because and especially now that it's not just Don Baarns Publishing says, here's a book. Don Baarns has to see if Johnny Heller, the author, wants to hear Simon, when in fact the voice in my head is Phil Thron, is Bill Lord, is somebody else. If I have that voice,
I would say that I audition. I also don't get
me
many,
too,
if any. I mean, I usually fail when I audition because they're looking for something specific, and I'm
they don't like our TikTok,
if you
channels.
like. Yeah, no, I'm not trendy. So and they want something different. But there are times, it's very frustrating. There's two stories. One is I remember auditioning for James Clavell way back, and it was one of those situations where the author's gone in a different direction. And so when it came out, I thought, I'll go listen to it and see what it's like, because I thought I'd be great for it, because it's the kind of thing I've done over the years. And the guy was so demonstrative, so over the top. I won't give titles or anything, but there was that one. And then more recently, one I did last summer, and it was Bernie Taupin's autobiography, and we got a chapter, and it was really good. And I grew up with that. I've done a lot of rock biographies and stuff over the years, and it was so good. And our very good friend, I bumped into at some union meeting, and it was John Lee. And he said, yeah, I'm doing Bernie Taupin's. I said, damn you. But he got it because he grew up in the same area of the country as Bernie. I mean, I'm not saying that's just the reason he got it, because he's a very good narrator, but he had the very authentic twinge even of black country accent that kind of nailed it for him. But I was very jealous. But that's the last audition. A lot of it is through what I get is authors I've worked with in the past, and they will come back to me. So those I don't audition for. but it's the unknown ones that tend to go elsewhere, and it's frustrating.
It's frustrating when they reach out and say, "Would you be interested in this? We'd like to present you for this," or they present it as a way that they just have to hear you. You probably have it, and then you get that note. They went another direction. I think they went the direction for not as good as me. Why did they do that? And I don't know. I try to say that usually I say, well, I hope the author, comes to their senses on the next project. Because I don't really, I mean, I would say, most recently, I think I said it on the show before, the last 6 auditions I did, I lost all but one. I got the Blues Brothers book. That was an audition. And see, to be me, that's a book they should just give me. I think that's exactly that's perfect for me. And yet the process is there and I have every chance of getting or not getting. But these, so I want people to know that being selected to audition is a big deal. And just so the process, and Simon, correct me if you think this is not correct, but I think that if Blackstone, Jesse or Brian or Grover, anybody says, all right, Simon, Don, Johnny, I've got you 3 up, because they think that's who they think probably do the best job in the book, and a 4th person in just as a wild card. But generally, they don't send 15 auditions to the author. It's top 3 or 4 who get even to the author even listens to, and the author says, "Well, it doesn't sound like my best friend in 2nd grade," which isn't too damn bad. Yeah. So I was going to take a question from the audience.
Yeah, we're going to take a question here. So if you were restarting here, or you were starting today, what's your best advice for somebody who's just getting into this and they want to be like you? They want to have all the awards and the great hair. What should they do?
Yeah.
You're talking about Johnny there with the hair. I didn't come up with a mentor or anything. Nobody taught me anything. It's one reason I think why I've never coached, because I'm one of those now. Just to say, I've watched in anticipation of this one, I watched the last 3 shows you did. The one after Christmas, the one with Tom Deere, which scared the crap out of me, to be honest, and the one with Anna, who is adorable. So. And I've forgotten my thread now, because the thought of Anna Clemens, she's just such a wonderful person, and and how scared I was of Tom Deere.
What do you wish to do?
Oh, the wash. Yes, I didn't come up. So it's hard for me. I talking about coaching and stuff like that. I don't know. You mentioned at one of those shows that knowing what you do, and I've never really known what I did. I've never really known what might have been the best lessons to give me when I was younger, because I think to me, coaching is giving the person confidence that everybody has the potential. I got into trouble with my wife one time because way back when I was just starting to think I might have been okay at audiobooks, about 2005 or 6, and not doubting quite so much. I'm sitting around a big table with the people at Blackstone having lunch, and I said, "No, I think anybody can do audiobooks." And she was kicking me out of the table. And I got what she said, because she played some of my stuff back to me in the car on the way home. And she said, "You do that, you do that. See what you did there?" And I'm going, oh yeah, I do. And I feel it's but I still hold on to that thought that anybody could do it if they believe in themselves enough. And I don't mean that sort of looking in the mirror and going, I'm getting better and better and every day. But there's an honesty, there's a truth, there's an openness, there's vulnerability, there's empathy, all those painful things. You said, Johnny, in one of the things I listened to, that how difficult it is to be an actor, to be a performer. It really, you have to rip yourself open every day, depending on not when you're reading the phone book, but when you're reading some of these things, you have to be so in touch with your vulnerable side that you run ragged sometimes. It's like doing a great performance of something. You come off the stage sweating and wrecked.
Yeah.
And it's to know it's not always like that. It's not always like that. I don't mean to scare people away, but there is, I think, if you can find your truth, that's a cliche, I know, but who you are, and let that come out through your voice. It's nothing you have to do. I know coaching you get these frameworks and you got to look at this way, you got to look at this way, this is what that sounds like. I hate all that. I understand the need for it. I don't knock coaches for what they have to do, but it kind of makes you, when I'm acting, if I get a bad acting teacher, it makes me, oh, I shouldn't move like that, I shouldn't have done that twitch, I shouldn't have done that. But if you just react naturally, the Ringo song, just act
Let me ask you
naturally.
though.
That's the
You
truth.
say, and I'm speaking to you now as a coach, an acting coach. You studied acting, did you not? At all?
I went to a Saturday morning drama school. This is part of the process that I left out of the TLDR of my career, but my parents wanted me out of the house on Saturday mornings. I'd gone to a school that had Saturday morning classes when I was very young. And then I went into the state system and there was no school on Saturday morning. So my parents hated that and they put me off to a drama school. They did an hour of stage technique and an hour of elocution, so I didn't sound like the common man. And that developed my sort of enjoyment of the stage. But that I did for several years.
And how
No,
old
I
were
never
you?
did any formal, ever did it.
How old were you
Say
during this
what?
process, roughly?
Oh, I did that from age of 8 till about 13,
See,
14. And then I went, then I did a couple of school plays. I did, when I was convinced that acting was not for adults. I grew up thinking acting is not for adults, shouldn't be an actor. It's a horrifying thing. My parents were medical people, a nurse and doctor, and my generations of grandparents were doctors. And I thought, well, I've got to get a responsible job. This is why I did engineering when I left school with my A levels in England. I did a year of engineering and realized my mistake, and took a year off and went back and did economics and wanted to do economics and politics. Yay, that would have been fun. As it was, I did economics, got my degree in economics. While I was at university, I very early on joined the drama club and did a play. Felt very out of it because they were all much older than me at the time, because they were second, third, and fourth years, and I sneaked my way in. I must have had some talent or something at that point. And it wasn't until the mid '80s that what was the trigger? Oh, I know. I was sitting with the people in the green room at the Books for the Blind, RNIB, Royal National Institute for the Blind's Books for the Blind. I think the titles have changed, not Talking Book Service or something. But I was sitting there, and some of them were radio people, some of them BBC, some of them, because the building was very close to Broadcasting House, but a lot of them were actors, or a few of them were actors as well. And one of the guys, the older guys, turned to me and said, "So, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a Radio 4 newsreader." And some light went off in my head, and I was look at it like that. I said, "But I want to be an actor." And I was, this would have been 1983, 4, 5, 85. So I would have been 30. And I just suddenly realized at 30, I actually want to be an actor. And as a member of British Equity at the time, because I was on the radio, I could go to the Actors Centre in London. I did classes in all kinds of things, just the 1 hour here, 1 hour there, little workshops. Got to work with a lot of great sort of West End actors who had a time on their hands to coach, cheaply, thankfully. And I did a bunch of classes there. And I went to a friend, Simon. We're still very, very good friends. He was artistic director at Farnham Theatre, and I dated his wife before they were married. But we were very good friends. And I said, "Simon," it was after the light went off, that right in my head. That's right. I called him up that night and I said, "Simon," he lived near Hampstead Heath. I said, "I'm going to come over to you. We go sit on Hampstead Heath. I've got to bring a bottle of wine and a lump of cheese and some bread. And you're going to dissuade me from being an actor because it's a stupid idea for an adult." And he didn't, funnily enough. He put me in line with another workshop thing, which was all about getting in touch with your creative core. And I did that weekend workshop, and it was like, oh my God, now I understand who I am, what I need to do in my life. All that coaching you didn't
do was being coached the whole time.
Well, I think that's kind of a cute thing where you're mentioning, coaching, whatever, but you started when you were 8, you were taking something every weekend, and then you happened to do workshops, and then you happened to meet some actors, and then you hung out with them, and then you did a weekend thing. So yeah, you've done no coaching, No self-development, no being
Nope.
around good actors.
Self-taught all the way. Yeah.
So it's, but here's the funny thing about great performers, and this across all different genres and all different types of performers. The best ones, when they're performing, it seems like nothing's going on. It's so,
Yeah.
you're not trying to act, because if you try to act while you're acting or performing, it's horrible. And you're at that point where it's part of you, to the point where you don't have to think about acting. And for someone new coming in, it's a different thing. If they're not, you had some outside frames of reference. Am I correct? You had other people that you were both aspiring to be like, and you were taking workshops to see what they did. And then today, you don't think about it, but you definitely did a whole lot of groundwork along the way. Is that close?
Well, yeah. There's a couple of things came to mind, most of which I've forgotten in my head. I remember the woman that I dated, Jo, who's Simon's wife for many years now, but when I met her, she was coming out of LAMDA, the London Academy for Mentally Deficient Actors. And and she said what they did at drama school in London was they spent the first year tearing you down, and then they put you back together, but they pretty much destroyed you. And then you came, and it gives you that sort of vulnerability. I never went through that kind of training. I often wish I could. I nearly did when I was over here in the mid-90s. I was applying to ACT to do an MFA in acting, and I got through the process, and then divorced and couldn't afford to do it anymore. So I regret never having a formal training. Now, there have been occasions when people say you shouldn't have had a formal training. It's good you didn't have a formal training. But the thing is, with audiobooks, I became a success in audiobooks because, well, here's the thing: is you shouldn't try to do something, and that's the problem I've had acting on the stage, or at least in front of the camera. It's so hard not to want to do something, and I'm still trying to learn that. Right now, I've got a manager. I'm trying to appear, get into TV and film before it's too late. Some may say it is too late, but I'm going to try and do that, because much as I love audiobooks, my desire has always been to. I love performing. It's not for the applause or anything. It's just I love it. I love expressing myself. I'm full of these little cliches and things, but I get a buzz out of, revealing. There's a favorite book of mine called The Actor's Shaman. Actors go through emotional processes to show the audience what's possible, what are the implications of this, what are the implications of that, because people are very tight, who are not actors, are very tight, sit there, and that's why we watch entertainment on TV, because it makes us feel something.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about performing. I can do that with audiobooks, because I sit in my little black box here, and there's no judgment, but I get out in the open on a camera on a set, and there's people, the producers on the side going, I don't know. It's really hard, and I'm going through.
It's also really hard because for me, all that tech that's involved. I don't have a green screen, and they want you to shoot on my iPhone, and it's just so unreal. The days are gone for even when you used to get to go to audition, you get to go live. I mean, they're coming back, but not the same way.
Yeah.
I got everything on camera commercials I got because I was there, and my personality gelled. Anybody could say, I like that Big Mac, but it's what's going on underneath that, where you bring it.
Well, that Matthew Lloyd Davis, a friend of ours, British narrator, lovely guy. He coaches a lot too. But when he was starting, he came into the Audies, met him at one of the Audies, and he had his cards. He said, "Do you mind if I use this on my card?" And he was British, and his card said Matthew Lloyd Davis, because Simon Vance can't narrate all the books.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was several years ago. So I laughed. It was fine. We've been friends ever since then. He's a lovely guy. But he mentioned to me, this casting director in the UK who runs this thing that includes 21-day self-tape challenges. So they drop a script at 7 p.m. and you have to get a self-tape back by 7 p.m. the next day. Part of it's to learn lines, because that's an issue. If you don't learn lines, it's harder to pick up a script and learn lines. So I've been doing those. I did 5-day workshops in the last year or so. And I have a thing. I've got my camera is set up on the side of my studio here. I can pull it out. I've got lights. I've got a blue screen. Actually, I can probably show you. Not
There
a
it
blue
is. Yeah,
screen,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there you go. Little roller
Yeah.
thing. There we go. Yeah,
hide those
that
guitars.
drops down. Yeah, it covers the guitars. So so every day at the moment I'm in the middle of a 21-day challenge.
Cool. See,
So
look
I'm
at all that
doing
coaching
tapes
you hate that you're
every
not
day.
getting.
But it's not coach. Nobody's
It
coaching.
is.
Well,
It's a learning
they
experience.
gave notes, but I'm just doing it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
And I do think
Because I don't listen to coaches.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you spent years taking classes, and that's coaching indirectly, or it is learning.
Yeah.
You've been you're obviously a lifelong learner, and you've given up on ever being better. That's obvious because you are still doing a 21-day challenge after. Here's the thing. So this is the takeaway that everybody really should see if we're newer. It's that after doing this for multiple decades, you're doing a 21-day challenge. You're challenging yourself to be better at something that you're interested in, and because you're willing to continue to learn and grow, then you're the type of person that will succeed at almost anything you do. And of all the takeaways people have, it doesn't come overnight because you spent decades doing a bunch of things to give yourself some prep. Today you don't have to think about it, but that's because of all the prep work you have put in behind the scenes over and over. Nobody knows you're doing a 21-day challenge. I'll bet you 95% of the people here don't have anything on their agenda for today that is a little put something in so that I have something that will work for me in 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. You're doing that. So one of the questions that comes up in your acting training or classes or things is do you have anything that you would kind of consider one of the more valuable skills or classes or things that you took that today pay off for you that was worth doing?
So many things, probably. One of the things I loved, the discovery that I could be ugly. You know what I mean? I don't mean that I don't mean I'm good looking.
Johnny said that to me too many
I mean,
times.
I mean, we try to hold on to our self-image or something like that. I'm this and I can't do that. No, we can do absolutely anything. I mean, there's an issue, I know, with books and stuff, but Johnny and I came up through the days when we did do everything. And I agree, it's great to have the authenticity, but that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is emotionally. I'm sorry, I can't do that. This is my voice, this is how I talk. No, go really ugly. Be nasty.
There's a
make a face at yourself. Go.
When you mentioned your background, economics and engineering and stuff, mine was in American history and political science, and I left a job as a newspaper reporter because I had to be an actor, and I had to be. That's all that was going to bring me any joy. And now that I do it, and when you mentioned the ugly part, because I don't know about branding. I don't know how I feel about branding. I don't know what Simon Vance's brand is. I don't know what Johnny Heller's brand is. The very term annoys me. But the idea of being an actor and doing things, like while I do the Blues Brothers, which is pretty funny and good and stuff, I'm doing something for lovely May Woolrich, the TJ Crowley. It's just wonderful, not about wonderful, but I'm playing. It's a story of racism, and I'm playing this racist member of the KKK who beats children and just hates blacks, and it's totally not at all who I am, and yet I have to find that guy in me. That's what amazes me about acting, because I don't think there's anything we're ever asked to do in an audiobook or in a play or in a film or anything that somehow isn't in us. And I think that we have to recognize, like the ugliness, like the ugly part that's in us exists, whether it's racism or some other kind of hate. Whatever makes you touch that honesty, that feeling, like I detest Trump. Can I play a guy who's a MAGA nut? Probably, and I can probably play it well if I find that, if I get rid of Johnny Heller's feelings and just see what's inside. And I think that's the acting challenge that I find quite exciting and quite invigorating in so many ways. And I believe that's what we're both talking about.
And I'm going to ask you a question, Simon. So also one of the things I noticed is when you found your ugly, you had some physicality about it, that and is that a part of your when you're narrating? Like I talk with my hands. I almost can't not. So are you quite physical? You're pretty stoic. How when you're acting, are you big? Are you small? I mean, does it change? What tell us about your
Yeah,
process
I
there.
mean, well, I came through radio stuff. You can't make it. I'm very aware of the microphone, so I'm not going to get too wild. But there are things like gestures. If I'm talking to someone, you need to understand what I'm saying is the whole kit and caboodle about blah blah blah. So this is what I'll be doing while the microphone is there. I don't just sit. So what you need to know. Let me point out that this is this and this is that and this is the other. That and I don't mind, people can do that. I've been in studios and I've seen, God, Blackstone's guy used to record from an armchair. You sit back in an armchair, it sounded great. But no, I need to, for me, posture is a lot of it, Feldenkrais and all that stuff. I took courses in this, that, and the other that the Actors Centre in London. But this, I've got a chair that doesn't creak. I'm fortunate in that, but I will always sit upright, and I will have the space around me to be able to do
Your gestures, yeah.
what I want to do. And then when talking to people, you don't move off mic and all that sort of business. You're very aware of that, but there is movement. And I occasionally have to watch it because I got this stupid aura ring. I'm thinking, but occasionally I'll hit things
Yeah,
with it,
we all do.
which is not a good idea. So little things, and of course the clothes you wear. If you're wearing, I wouldn't wear this shirt in the studio because although it's nice and casual, it's got a sort of a.
And Johnny, are you
only have
gesturing
one-
a lot when you're narrating, when you're doing your comedy, when you're narrating? A
Oh,
lot of gestures.
yeah,
Little?
it's really character driven. I mean, if it's fiction and the character's this guy, then yeah. But if it may be professorial, I may not. Really depends on the character. In a nonfiction, it'd be the way I would do it if I was doing a TED talk. Just to I think if you do this naturally, and most of us do, you can't remove it because then it becomes unnatural and weird. And it makes, if you feel robotic, indeed you are robotic. People have to understand whatever it is they think they feel, that's what it is. That's what the listener's going to get. Why does he sound so robotic? Well, because perhaps he's sitting like, this, and that's not. So if it's more comfortable, leaning in, pulling back, there's 1,000 things to do. And I think you have to do it all because, especially in fiction, where you're playing all, as Simon mentioned, we're playing everybody. And not everybody, if you're doing Quasimodo, you might start doing this, nothing wrong with that idea. It's just, who are you playing? What is he like? If you envision and feel and live in that character for a while, then that's going to change everything. The way you sit, the way you move, or your mouth side, anything, you're crazy.
I did do the Hunchback of
Yeah, it
Notre
was a good
Dame
one. That was.
a year or two ago.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just saw somebody went through on the thing saying, yeah, I should be worried. I'm doing a whole series on serial killers and I should be worried. No, the point is you're not. Don't be worried. You get into it and you do. It's not you're going to walk out and be a serial killer. You're enjoying. Oh, there it is.
My doggy out.
Maybe you should all be worried. No, I mean, you take on personas while you're on the stage. You don't carry them off. That's method acting gone too crazy.
If you play a serial killer, it doesn't mean you're going to start, being a killer. We've talked about this a lot of times. I just think if I cast Simon in a role and he plays, what's the name of the British spies that are famous in the 50s? Philbin.
Tim Philbin.
So let's say he's that.
Philby.
If he plays him, does a
Philbin.
great job, it doesn't mean he's going to suddenly become a spy.
No.
Good.
No, I mean, I'm doing. I don't do coaching, but I'm taking 2 acting classes a week these days, and I'm doing a long scene from Long Day's Journey to Night, playing Tyrone.
Oh yeah.
Old Irish drunk, and it's wonderful. But I am having difficulty because I tell you the thing I have, a true confession when it comes to stage work is there is a part of me that wants to be liked. And that's a difficulty when you're playing
someone unlikable.
People. Doesn't mean they're evil people, but sometimes the desire to be liked gets in the way of the truth, of the honesty. And I think that actually, that's true of audiobooks. if you keep thinking, I want to sound like people, I want people to listen to me. So, but no, don't worry about that. That's where they're being ugly. Play the serial killer, but walk out of the room and, you're not a serial killer. I went to one of my first therapists, one of my first many years of therapy.
To stop you from serial killing?
Was I walked in there because I was a crybaby as a child, very vulnerable, very upset. I used to have rants and stuff, not violent or anything, but I was crybaby, softy. But also so as an adult, a young adult, I get worried about being too emotional. And I remember saying to her, I'm just worried when I get one of these, I get really upset. I'm going to be an axe-wielding homicidal maniac. And she said, Simon, you can be many things, but you will never be a homicidal axe-wielding maniac. But I could play one.
Yeah, you can. You can. I think you can be a maniac at any moment. But the homicidal thing, I'm not sure about that.
I did play a sociopathic killer. It was wonderful. The Ghost, no, it wasn't the Ghost Train. It was something else. I had a wonderful time. And I walked out of the theater and somebody was parked in a really tight space. And I went over to help them get out of it. And there was a woman driving. She looked at me and she'd been in the audience. She went, I think she thought I was sociopathic killer in, God, was it, I can't remember the play now. One of the 1930s things.
Someone's asking here about if someone's newer, and do you think that they should at this like narrow themselves to a specific genre? I mean, focus on a genre, or do you think they should be doing more general and work their way in? What should somebody do if they're newer? Because I mean,
well, I think this is a question. I mean, I can't really answer because I don't coach. Johnny would know better than I do of what's needed. As I understand it, yes, I think that's probably something you should do once you can identify what you're good at. Because the publishers, I think, need that. And in some ways, maybe Johnny and I, because we don't have a particular genre, at least I don't have a particular genre I've been good at. That said, everybody wants me to do fantasy.
Yeah.
And it drives me insane because I'm not a big fan of it. But
hold on.
The latest book I just
gotta
got.
drill down on that. You don't really love fantasy, but somebody else believes that's your strength, publishers, and therefore they ask you to do that a lot. So that's fascinating. How did that get started?
Let me expand on that. A lot of fantasy is badly written. I don't like badly written books, whatever they are. I find it hard. I describe to people, I have particular favorites like Guy Gavriel Kay. His books, Tigana is one of his best known, but I do his books. He produces one every 3 seconds. I love it. It's like when I narrate his books, it's like skimming stones across water. The words just come out. It's like singing. It's gorgeous. And then there are other books that are like wading through mud to bring them off the page. I mean, Johnny's familiar with this. It's just so hard.
Yep.
And recently in the last decade, the growth in sort of self-publishing or things, and there are mainstream publishers or bigger publishers or big small publishers who tend to find these books and then want to bring them to market. And I get series of 7 or 8 books and they're all 25 hours long, and they are difficult. They're difficult. And I understand there's an audience for them. And I think some of that is because we actually do make them live off the page.
I think, if I, in answer to the specific question, there seems to be a movement now more toward, instead of being a medical general practitioner, having a specificity in your genre. That being said, I would suggest you do 3 to 5 demos of different genres that you think, 2 things. 1, that you can get hired in, and 2, that you like. Simon has said he doesn't like fantasy, so he shouldn't have a demo in fantasy if he's starting out, because that's not the work he wants. He likes literary fiction, well-written things, classics. You can't say, I only want to do books that are well-written because no one will hire you. So, but I think you should pick a couple of genres, and also let a lot of the publishers have these portals now, and you put down what you like. Simon, look at Simon's guitars. So Simon can say, one of the things I really love is guitar. So if a book comes out, and I know he's done a lot of rock and roll books, Rod Stewart, he's done a lot of things, but he likes that stuff. He likes guitars, he likes music. So if there's a music industry book, you're going to hit something he already loves, and they'll know that. So that I think you should spend some time thinking about your bio and about what you put in, about the things you like, because that makes a difference. Will there be a book specifically about a Stratocaster? I don't know, but there'll be books about guitars and guitar players and music that you can be as general or specific as you like. But I'm just saying that if there are things, if, for example, I forgot, Wendy happens to be a wonderful rock climber, there's probably books about that, things like that. But you should pick a few genres, and once you become adept and really good and well known at that, then say, you know, I've done a lot of these rock climbing fantasy books. I'd like to get into Bunsen burner science books. So now you're changing a little bit. So I think once you claim a genre and show you can do stuff, then they'll take it. It's the same way as you try to get a job. If you're out of work, hard to find a job. If you're gainfully employed, it's easier to find a different job. It's just the nature of the world.
Yeah. And this is why Johnny coaches and I don't. I agree. It's not that I don't ever do fantasy. The thing is, you know, we need to make a living.
I like fantasy books.
And you can't just, I've never, once, I've done a couple of, I've turned down a couple of things. And now, of course, when I'm not working right now, I don't have a lot of stuff on my schedule. I regret turning down any books whatsoever. So I'll do anything. I'll read the phone book if you'll pay me. I just want to say there's a couple of other questions, because I know, as you often say in these things, you call it Ask Me Anything and then don't answer any questions. There's another question here. Do you have a sense of how often you stop yourself when recording to have another go? I stop when I make a mistake or I haven't got the sense right. You know, and we stumble and we know that, or there's an exterior click or something, or you know your mouth went, you know, when you didn't want it to, which happens. Your stomach grumbled. So there's all kinds of things like that. But in how often I stop myself, it's difficult. But when I do a clean edit afterwards, because what I do is my straight record is I record and I've got a little marker I drop. I hit the mouse and drop a marker when I make a mistake, and I pick up, you know, from the paragraph, from the sentence, whatever. And I would say at least once a minute, you know, it is that I need to put an edit, sometimes a lot more, you know, if you've got a complicated sentence. And the one other occasion is sometimes because we get tired, and there have been occasions because I flow, I read very easily, and suddenly I've read a paragraph and I go, I have no idea what I just read. I'd better do it again, because I may have got it perfectly right. It might have been perfectly adequate, but I don't know what I said. So I'm going to go back and do it again with a little more attention paid to it, because we drift.
Because you get used to reading along at a fairly nice clip, and we've done it, and I can read, people, sometimes I read aloud for people, and how do you keep going without messing up? Well, you know, it's not always messing up the word, it's messing up the intent, the feeling. As soon as what Simon's talking about, if you become disconnected, so will the listener, and you simply can't allow it. If at the end, at the end of a little paragraph or page, you say, wait a minute, what the hell did I just read? And you don't know. You don't know. That's not good.
I should, this is not that we want to get into this whole thing about AI, but that is AI from beginning to end of a
connection.
book. There is no connection ever. Cannot possibly be.
No,
so
you get more connected with Siri.
And as you say, that can be tolerable in certain books. People can listen to that. Some people don't mind that. But if you're listening for the connection, you won't get it.
Warren, that's a great question. I do talk. If there's a difference when you start in the morning and the end of the day, and how do you match it?
Yeah, well, that's a good one. I think someone earlier on, I think I saw something about how much recording you do in a day. I used to try to get 3 hours finished a day. That's what I used to do. I do 2 hours in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. But now I'm in my early 40s now, so I find it a little harder to keep going. Why are you laughing?
I'm just smiling.
Don't laugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I cut back to getting, if I can do 2 finished hours a day. Now that has changed. A couple of months ago, the last big book I got, Random House came at me with a book, Judgment at Tokyo. It was based on the Tokyo War trials after the Second World War. And it was a big book, and the producer had forgotten about it and needed it done in 2 weeks. So I did 3 hours a day and actually got, I think one day I got 4 hours done, but I can't do that. So the voice, I have to be very careful. So the one thing is, yes, take care of your voice. You know, if there is a big difference between the beginning and the end of the day, I think you're doing something wrong. There's always a difference. Don't expect yourself to sound the same at the end of the day as you did at the beginning today. And I think I heard Johnny say this in one of the other classes. You basically begin the next day by listening to what you did at the end of the day before. Now, I always break. That's an important thing, is where you choose to break. I always break at the not paragraph, at the chapter. If the chapters are the right length, I schedule according to chapters. So I'll do, I'll mark so many chapters. Now, sometimes the chapters are, 100 pages long, rarely, but they occasionally happen that way. Or they don't have chapters at all. Well, then you've got to find a story break where the actual mood of the story changes completely. So you still do the, check what did I record before and what am I recording now. But if there is a subtle difference, it can be because it's from a different POV or a different whatever, or next day or next week.
I was recording the Blues Brothers just before we started today, and I wasn't going to finish the chapter. But there's it's one of those kind of things where it's word, and then there's a break, like where a sentence we plugged in is no sentence because it's a mood change. We're changing the theme here a little bit. So that's where I find the break, and I put a bookmark in there, and I'll listen to the last couple of sentences and pick it up actually when we're done here. I want to say something as we're near the end. I want to say a couple things. First, I want to thank Simon for his time. I want to thank him for, I don't want to make you feel embarrassed, but for what I find to be your brilliance. You're a brilliant narrator. Listening to you is an absolute joy. Having you as my friend is an absolute joy, but as a talented, it's what you're wonderful. I just think the world of you on every level. And I want to do a little plug. Go to scottbrick.com to sign up for the Audiobook Business Workshop, March 3rd. That's the Sunday in LA. So sign up. It's coming up. It's happening whether you like it or not. And the next day is the Audies. We'll be in the same hotel as the APA mixer. So when you're done from us, you just walk down the hallway and go to the next shindig. Of course, in LA, that's probably a drive, but in real life, it's a short walk. Yeah. So I want you to come.
Cool.
Simon, anything you want to plug?
I got nothing. I didn't know if we were going to talk about guitars. I did have this. This is my first. This is my baby. I love this one. I got this in 1980, just after my dad died. And it's a Les Paul copy, and it's got a serial number on the back of it. So I know it was made in the Fujigen factory in Japan in 1976. Wow. And I put Lola pickups on it, changed the pickups, and I actually had to change the tuners at the top because they were really old. But that is my,
that's your pride and joy?
My favorite. I've got some really fancy. I did do Steve Howe's biography, the Yes guitarist, and I just got an ES335. I've got a bunch of Gibsons. I've got like 8, 9 guitars, and I love them.
Friends,
Don said we're going to have a conversation over coffee sometime.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is that I know categorically anybody that's played any music has really good ears. They hear things that most people don't hear. They pick up accents. Now people can do it without playing music. But musicians have, as part of their coming of age as a musician, some things they have to do that help tune their ears. And I just find they pick up accents faster than most people because of that, unless they've had some great acting training and they've actually studied that. But they have great ears. And that's why he also can be successful doing some of the tech stuff, because he has ears that come from some training. I know you hate coaching, or, you're kind of saying that. I know you don't hate it, but
I know I got what I say. What I just want to clarify is that I didn't ever have a formal training or one person,
right.
Like people talk about I had a mentor or somebody guided me here and there. I've had input. I've always been open. I've always been willing. And what you said earlier, I never stop challenging myself.
Right.
Never stop challenging myself to get better.
And that's obvious, but that also shows up in your work. And that's why Johnny has that same attitude and mindset you do. Every time I talk to people who are at your level or even aspiring to be, they have that same mentality. And for anybody who's out there thinking that, boy, I've done this a year and I'm not a huge success yet, it's like, yeah, darn. I mean, that's the way the world works. The success comes after 5 years of doing some of this stuff. And still today, I love that you're on this 21-day challenge. and you are not sitting around going, well, I've won these awards. I don't need to do any stuff. You're still having a challenge. Show us that.
This is my script. I got to learn this. I've got to get this done. I'm going to do this. No, sometimes I do it after it drops last night. This one dropped last night. I printed it off, but I'm going to go off and do that. Set up I pull my screen down, pull the camera out. I'll do 5,000 takes because that's what I do before I find the one I like, because I'm very judgmental of my own work. But
that's really good.
It's a pleasure to see you, and thanks for joining us today.
And we have a show note that I have to get in for next week. We have been on Tuesday every time we've done this for the last 3 months. Next week is our exception. I have a family funeral, extended family funeral that I'm attending next week, and I'll be flying the next Tuesday. So we are next Wednesday. It will be the exception. So anybody, please help us spread the word. So when I put out the notices, please put a comment in there that says, are you really saying Wednesday? Anything that you can to help us get the word out that next week, unfortunately, I just have a family situation. So we're on Wednesday, and we're excited to have Phil Throne with us next Wednesday. And then we'll be back on our normal Tuesday schedule after that. So any final words here, Johnny?
No, just remember to sign up for the audiobook business workshop. I'm looking, Simon, you may be interested in this. We'll talk later of a New Orleans workshop in early May. So I'm trying to get details on that. It'll be a workcation. It won't be, you don't have to coach at all. You could just come and eat beignets. So that's what
you know me. You know me well.
I'll wake you at noon. Yeah.
All right.
But thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for being a part of this. Don,
thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the wires and see you next Wednesday. And then we're back to Tuesday every other time after that. You have a fantastic day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.